Is grant money free money? The short answer is no, it's not. Free money is if I give you a gift for your birthday and I say, go spend it however you want. Grant money is not that. A grantor has funds that they're distributing based on a mission that they have to carry out. And when they give grant funds to your organization, they've determined that you are the best, most qualified organization to carry out or fulfill the mission that they're hoping to achieve when they give you that money. It's not entirely free money. The reason people have the perception that grant money is free money is because grants are not funds that you have to pay back. You don't have to give the money back. It's not a loan. It's money that you do get to keep. So sometimes it feels like free money. That being said, different grants have different levels of complexity and different requirements. So there are times that grants can feel like they're free money. For example, your organization might apply for funding to attend a training that it had already wanted to attend. You apply for funding, you get money to go to the training, and the funder has paid for the expenses for your organization to go to the training. Therefore, it feels like free money. A funder paid the expenses for you through the grant. At a high level, grants have 4 parts. The first part is the application process. The second part, after you receive notice that you've received the award, is the execution part, where you fulfill the requirements of the grant or the obligations that come along with that grant. They might be simple, as in the last example, in which you say, we are going to use these funds to attend a training, and then you go to the training. You have executed on that particular grant. There's also compliance, and sometimes, and quite often, compliance is concurrent with execution. You are compliant with that particular grant award because you use those funds to go to the training you said you were going to instead of taking a vacation with your family. You are compliant with the terms. Then the final stage of the grant, once you receive the funds, you've used the funds and met the compliance requirements, is the reporting requirement. And that is a stage in which you provide to the funder evidence that you've used the grant the way you stated you would use it in the application. In our example, it might be providing receipts that show that you spent the money on that particular training, and then a write-up around what your organization learned and gained from that particular training. Nearly every grant has those 4 requirements built in. There are some exceptions because the term grant is a broad term. When we talk about a grant, we can mean a pretty wide number of different things, depending on the context of that grant itself. Let's talk about a few different types of funding. First are some broad categories. There is restricted funding, that is funds that are used for a very specific set purpose. And then there is unrestricted funding. And that is the instance that probably feels most like free money, because unrestricted funding is funding that the grantor, the organization that gave your organization the money, says, we trust that you're going to make the best use of it. You can use it for whatever you'd like to use it for. In that case, you can use the funding to send your staff to trainings, to purchase equipment, to invest in your programs, to do some staff development and staff on-site learnings. You have the option to do what you want to do with unrestricted funds. Sometimes, depending on the type of funding and the reason you're receiving the funding, restricted funding can become unrestricted funding after you've met the terms and the obligations and have some return back for various reasons. Maybe you have funding to generate loans to a certain community and those loans are repaid, and after you've used that funding for those loans, that becomes unrestricted funding to your organization. Unrestricted funding is harder to find. It's competitive because organizations that use grant funding do like the flexibility to do whatever they would like with the funding. And the funders that are creating and awarding that type of funding are a bit fewer and far between. And this is why many nonprofit organizations rely on outside donations to fund some of their programs and some of the things that they need to do to execute, because unrestricted funds are important, but less available. Most grants that you receive will come with restrictions on it, making it not free money. There are also 4 types of grants to be aware of. The first is a capacity building grant, and this is a grant that is used to build your organization's capacity and ability to deliver. Capacity building grants can be used from time to time for things like hiring a new staff person, purchasing new computer equipment, and investing in your infrastructure and operations. Capacity building money can feel like free money because it builds your team's ability and gives you more resources to do what you need to do. They're funds that you don't have to spend on program delivery. The second type of funding is programmatic funding, and that is typically restricted funds to use towards a specific program or executing upon a specific service. These grant awards are not free money. These are applications in which you submit the proposal. You are agreeing to do something, to execute on something in exchange for the funds that you're receiving. The third type of funding that is available is general operating funds. And these are funds that are used for your operations and your overhead. Again, these are less common types of grant awards. They are available, they're out there, they're highly competitive, but this is another type of funding that can sometimes feel a little bit more like the free money. However, you're still doing work in exchange. You are keeping the organization going and making sure that things are running. And then the fourth type of grant award that you could potentially receive are for capital expenses. These are more significant awards. They're typically released for community development purposes. And these are the types of funds that sometimes you see small businesses getting and various types of organizations. A city or local government might decide to release funds for capital expenses to help small businesses in their community do building improvements, as an example. But these still have specific uses as well. They're not unrestricted funding. Therefore, it's important to keep in mind that when you're applying for grant funding, some grant applications can be simple and can feel like you are getting money that is being invested in your organization that feels a little bit like it's free money. Keep in mind, the more complex the grant and the larger the potential award, the more likely it is that there are restrictions on the uses of funding and the higher the compliance and reporting requirements around that funding. When you're thinking about or considering applying for a significant award, I encourage organizations to really consider that grant application as a business proposal. It is similar to an RFP, responding to an RFP in some ways, because when you put together the grant application, you're submitting a clear plan about your organization's qualifications, about how you'll use the funds, about how and why you believe it's reasonable that your organization could execute on the award in the way that you've described. You're putting together a proposal to do some work. And in that case, when you're doing work in exchange for money, it's just a different operating model. It's very similar to the way that a business sells a product to generate revenue. Even though your process of receiving the funding to do something is different than going out to market and selling a product or building a marketing campaign and sales funnels to attract people to your organization to get them to buy the product. The larger, more complex awards with those delivery requirements are essentially part of the organization's revenue model for delivering on some type of social good or some type of service that benefits the community or aligns with the funder's mission. A lot of organizations starting out that are newer to applications sometimes start with those smaller awards that feel a little bit more like free money. And that can lead to a misconception that grant awards are like free money, particularly if you have people on your board of directors or in your space who are encouraging you to apply for funds. Keep in mind and make sure you let those stakeholders know that the larger, more significant awards require your organization to do some work on the back end. In that case, it's important to review your strategic plan and make sure that work aligns with the direction you want your organization to go. Because of this perception that grant money is free money, a lot of organizations dive in when they're new to it without the full understanding of the requirements behind it. These types of actions and decisions can derail an organization because you are then investing new time and resources, standing up a new program, going in a direction that your organization hadn't really intended to go because you had the idea that grant money was easy money. Again, it can be for certain small awards, and some awards can be incredibly beneficial to building your organization's capacity or helping you to do things you wouldn't otherwise be able to do. Grants are an important part of many nonprofits' revenue and operating model. They are necessary for nonprofit organizations to expand and to grow. Experienced organizations are familiar with grant requirements, and they usually have a whole team working to respond to grant applications and to execute on reporting and compliance requirements and monitor to make sure that the grant application is on track. Your organization should desire to grow to that level. There are different conversations to be had around how much an organization should be self-sufficient outside of grant applications, but it's something to keep in mind if you're in particular an organization where grants are not a core part of your operating model. Some small businesses receive grants. Sometimes there are unique opportunities for different types of organizations that wouldn't typically rely on grant funding to receive a grant. So in those cases, if you're thinking about a grant application, go for it. Put together a strong application, but remember that it's not free money. If you have an expectation of continuing to apply for grants in any capacity in the future, you want to build your reputation as a reliable partner to the funder, ensuring that you are carrying out your responsibility to meet the requirements of any grant application that you're applying for. My name is Sarah Hope Marshall, founder of Profound Hope Industries. Profound Hope Industries works with mission-focused organizations to help them execute on their community engagement objectives while balancing purpose with profit in the process. Like and subscribe and follow along for more videos on how you can enhance your mission and grow